Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start. Thank you so much for coming, both to our folks on Zoom and here in the room. Thanks for coming to the SCR Speaker Series. We have a really special speaker today, a leader in the state of Wyoming. Mr. Travis Deti is the Executive Director of the Wyoming Mining Association. He's a native of Laramie, and he holds a degree in political science from the University of Wyoming. Prior to joining WMA in 2011, he worked as a legislative assistant and field representative to U.S. Senators Craig Thomas and John Barrasso, both in D.C. and in Cheyenne, focusing on national defense, veteran issues, foreign affairs, immigration, and government affairs. Deti is a former sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps and a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Appointed to the Wyoming Veterans Commission by Governor Matt Mead, he served 10 years, ending his term as chairman in 2021. Deti is a 2016 graduate of Leadership Wyoming and is a member of the Society for Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration. He and his wife Kim live in Cheyenne and have 2 sons, John and Brendan. So Travis, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Can everyone hear me all right? Is the mic? Thank you. Hold your applause. I don't know if I earned anything yet. Can everyone hear me okay? Well, thank you, Dr. Kruk. I really appreciate being invited. I was looking at the list of speakers in this series, and every one of them had a doctor in front of their name, and I think I'm the only one that doesn't. But I can tell you that I spent 10 years at the University of Wyoming, but I'm no doctor. So C's get degrees, I guess. So what the hell? Anyways, it's great to be here with you. I love coming back to Laramie. I'm a Laramie kid. In fact, I grew up across the street from here. You can literally see my childhood home right from the front door of this building. So it's great to be back. And the university actually owns my family's old home right now, and the lawn looks terrible. So if any of you have any sway with anybody to get them over there and get that place cleaned up, I'd appreciate it. So my slide presentation is going to be kind of boring. It's more or less talking points for myself. But what I wanted to kind of talk about today, give you a little snapshot of the industry, where we're at today, and some of the challenges facing each of our different sectors, and then kind of focus in and lead into the discussion on where some opportunities are. Mining is not dead in Wyoming by any means, regardless of what it comes out in the news sometimes. You know, we're alive and well, and try to advance here. Clicker doesn't seem to be working. Where do I need to point? Technology is awesome. Yeah. I'm going to talk about technology too. We'll get going here. I've been in this same boat so many times. There we go. All right. Hey, there we go. Gotta have the tech guy. So the first thing I'd like to start off with is what we call a safety share. Whenever we have any of our committee meetings or do any presentations, we start with something that's called a safety share. Safety is paramount in the Wyoming mining industry, and it's probably one of the most important issues that we deal with every day. We always start with what we call a safety share. A safety share is little more than just a little tidbit that you pass along to make sure to go through your day safe. Work safe, home safe. My safety share for you today would be, traveling over from Cheyenne. There's a lot of construction. There's a lot of construction here in town. Always wear your seatbelt. Never ever text and drive. That sort of thing. We're getting ready for some winter weather. Make sure you're prepared for winter when you're driving. That's a safety share. We pass those along every presentation we do, every shift that they start out at a mine. They start off with a safety share. because it is one of the most important things. Our mines are the safest in the country. And statistics show that working in the Wyoming mining industry, whether it's in coal, bentonite, trona, uranium, you're safer working in a Wyoming mine than you are in a number of other more common occupations. In fact, statistics have shown that you're safer working in a Wyoming mine than you are working at a Walmart. One year when statistics came out from the Department of Labor Statistics, you were safer working in a Wyoming mine than you were being a member of the clergy. So, and that's not by accident. We have a culture of safety. Every shift starts with a safety inspection. Our mines employ dedicated safety professionals to ensure that safe working environment and practice. And statistically, a miner can work an entire career, 30 years without a lost time accident. So we're very proud of that. During the COVID-19 pandemic last year, the mining industry in Wyoming was at the forefront of protecting their workers. We're an essential industry. We had to keep our workers on the job. And so our guys were the leaders in the state at implementing those procedures, whether it be the guidelines from the Wyoming Department of Health, mask use, social distancing, and putting those procedures into place so that we could keep our workers on the job. And we're very proud of that. So, and it's very important, I think, for us to relay to the public just how important that is and the extent that we go to make sure our workforce is safe. So why are we here? Mining is critical to Wyoming. It's one of the reasons why we're a state. Back in the 19th century, when Joseph Carey was lobbying for statehood for the state of Wyoming, one of his key arguments was Wyoming's unsurpassed mineral riches. It was that key argument, and it's one of the reasons why we're here as a state. We've got a miner on our great state seal. So Wyoming and mining go hand in hand. A lot of people like to say, well, Wyoming, we're just a mining colony. Well, to some extent, that's true. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. We're kind of proud of that, actually. Americans across the country and around the world use the products of our mines every single day, whether you know it or whether you don't. We're the nation's leader in the production of four basic minerals that my association represents. Obviously, coal, bentonite, trona, which is processed into natural soda ash, and uranium. We have the second highest grade rare earth deposit in the country up in the northeast corner of the state. And there's gold in them there hills. We're going to start mining for gold west of Cheyenne here pretty soon. We've got a lot of stuff in the ground. I heard a great quote the other day watching a congressional hearing from a gold mining CEO out of Nevada, not talking about Wyoming, but about America in general. We've got so much stuff in the world there. We import a lot of minerals. We import a lot of stuff. We've got stuff here. We just haven't found it yet. So our state and our country, we have great mineral riches, and it's up to us to continue to develop them responsibly and provide for those needs for those raw products for the stuff that Americans use every day. Talking about our reserves, what we've got in the ground, we've got about 250 million tons of bentonite in the ground. That's enough for 55 years the way we use it today. 162 billion tons of recoverable coal. That's coal that we can get to today. That's about 110 years worth of energy. We have a total resource of coal in Wyoming of about 1.4 trillion tons. And that's called the reserve. Can't get to it today. With advances in technology, we may be able to get to it someday. There's a lot of coal in the ground. We've got 40 billion tons of trona in the ground. That's enough to provide for the way we use it today for the next 2,000 years. And uranium, based on the price of uranium, millions of pounds of uranium in the ground. I'll talk a little bit about coal first, kind of where we are, and then just kind of go through the minerals individually and then start talking about some of the challenges and opportunities we have in front of us. So we've been the nation's leading coal producer since 1986. 8 of the top 10 producing mines are located in Wyoming up in the Powder River Basin, and 40% of the nation's coal comes from Wyoming. Our coal is thermal coal. We use it almost exclusively for energy generation. And the Powder River Basin is at the center of our coal production because of its world-class seams. Those seams can run more than 80 feet thick. And when you think about that, put that in perspective, mining operations in Appalachia or the Pennsylvania area, those seams run about 10 feet thick. When I first started with WMA, there was a reality show on A&E or one of those cable channels, following the trials and tribulations of a small West Virginia coal mine. And I remember one of the day, it was a terrible show, it was awful, but one of the episodes ended with this group of miners. They were patting themselves on the back because they had mined 400 tons in a day. We put 400 tons in a single truck in the Powder River Basin. So just to kind of give you a little idea of how much coal there really is up there. It's a great resource because it has low production costs. We basically just dust it off, shovel it out, and it has that low sulfur content, which is critical for meeting your EPA standards under the Clean Air Act. Coal is a leasable mineral, and I'll kind of just hit on this because there's a difference between our coal and our Trona resources and our uranium bentonite resources. Leasable minerals are those that are federally owned and managed by the federal government under the Mineral Leasing Act. And those include those energy minerals such as coal, oil, gas, and Trona is kind of a different animal. It's not really an energy mineral, but it falls under those leasable minerals too. So all of our coal, starting, I guess, in December, all of our coal in Wyoming will be surface mined. We have one underground mine in Sweetwater County, and that mine will be closing down, shuttering up at the end of November, I believe. Nothing nefarious about it, just a mine plan, a short little mine plan for a little underground mine by the Jim Bridger power plant. So last year in Wyoming, with the COVID-19 pandemic, where everyone was down, we mined 218.6 million tons, and that's the lowest since the 1980s, down from a high of 466 million tons in 2008, back in the heady days of coal mining in Wyoming. Will we ever get to that point again? Probably not. So we're kind of adjusting to a new normal as the country transitions from coal to natural gas and then eventually to renewables and hopefully nuclear. The industry employs about 4,700 people. That's down from about 7,000 in the heyday. And last year, again, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the industry brought in about $842 million in taxes, royalties, fees, and that goes to state, local, and the federal government. The Wyoming cut of that was about 640 million tons. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail here in a little bit. So there's where our mines are, obviously up in the Powder River Basin. We have the mines that feed the Jim Bridger power plant right there. Our little mine in Kemmerer, which feeds the power plant right there, and also supplies coal to the little generating facilities at our Trona operations here in Sweetwater County as well. So that's just a snapshot of where we are in the coal industry. I want to back up a little bit here. With those taxes and royalties and fees, the coal industry is probably the most heavily taxed industry in the state of Wyoming. We pay severance tax. We pay ad valorem taxes on property and production. We pay federal royalties, half of which, a little bit more than half of which, go to the federal government. We pay abandoned mine land fees, which is split with the federal government. We pay a black lung fee, about $140 million last year. None of that goes to Wyoming because we don't have a black lung issue. So it's a very big revenue generator for our government. Bentonite, as well as uranium, are what are called locatable minerals. And these are minerals that fall under the mining law of 1872, where you basically go and it pretty much is. Obviously, you have to work with who owns the land, whether it's the state, the feds, or a private landowner. But you can go out and actually stake a claim, put a stake in the ground, and explore for the mineral. It's different from the leasable minerals in that we know where all the leasable minerals are. The locatables, you have to actually go out and locate. You have to explore, which is one of the issues that we've got in Wyoming right now, is it's kind of difficult to explore for new minerals and something that we have to look at going down the line if we're going to continue to develop our resources. Our bentonite, it's surface mine. You basically just scrape off the dirt and you scrape it out of the ground. The mine pits run about 10, 15, 20 feet deep, and it's clay. You pull the clay out of the ground, you dry it, and you use it for various products. Mined in the Bighorn Basin in central Wyoming and in northeast Wyoming. It's all over the place, and it's pretty unique to Wyoming. 3.4 million tons in 2020, almost 700 employees in the industry, and $10.3 million to state and local governments. We don't pay federal taxes on this one. And this is a debate that they're having in Congress right now as to whether to charge federal royalties for locatable minerals mined on federal lands. The big question about that, and the thing that we say, you don't really need to charge a royalty is, unlike coal, unlike oil and gas, when those things come out of the ground, they have value immediately. With bentonite or other minerals, they have no value. The company has to invest to process and stuff in order to give that mineral value. And so they put a heavy investment in, and we feel that the argument is, and I won't get too deep into this, but the company is investing an awful lot to make that mineral, give that mineral value before it comes out of the ground. So bentonite, it's a clay formed from volcanic ash, and it has certain properties that make it unique. It expands to several times its size in water. It makes an excellent sealant and a hole plug used in drilling fluids in our oil field operations. Drilling fluids and drilling muds, hole plugs, environmental sealants, and it can withstand very high pressure, high temperature rather, without losing its chemical properties. And so it's used in steel making, in the molds that make the engine blocks for your automobiles in the Midwest. So it's a very unique and a very valuable mineral. We call it miracle mud, the clay of 1,000 uses. Drilling mud, environmental sealants, taconite for steel production, metal cast molds and foundries, clarifying agents so your wine and your fruit juice isn't cloudy when you drink it. Fertilizer and animal feeds, paints, crayons, paper, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and pet litter. We're the cat litter capital of the world in Wyoming. Bentonite is the clumping component in your cat litter so that you don't have to throw out an entire box of cat litter like you used to have to do back in the 1970s, like I had to do with my cats, my parents' cats. You just scoop it out, and it's a better use of the resource. Interestingly enough, in the COVID pandemic, when every other industry in the state and across the country were down, our bentonite producers had record years. People are staying home. People, especially in urban areas, bought pets to stay at home with. And our cat litter industry boomed in Wyoming. They had some of the best production years of their existence. And that's kind of where the graphic of where our bentonite mines are located. Another mineral unique to Wyoming is Trona. We have a very unique deposit in all the world. A water-soluble mineral formed from volcanic ash over a period of millions of years, and it's mined as the primary source of natural soda ash in the United States. Our deposit is the largest in the world. Layered beds that go anywhere from 800 to 3,500 feet deep. We have 4 operators out there right now developing the resource, and they all operate on different beds in Sweetwater County, and it's all mined underground. You basically carve the rock out, you skiff it to the top, and then it's processed into natural soda ash up top at those facilities outside of Green River. Trona is a leasable mineral. We lease it from the federal government, pay federal royalties on it. And again, mined underground, 15.5 million tons. That's down. That was in 2020. We were down about 40% due to the COVID pandemic last year. The good news is the industry is recovering very well, and we expect expansion in that industry. The industry employs about 2,700 people in Sweetwater County, and it's a key economic driver for that county. And again, they paid about $103 million in taxes, royalties, and fees to the feds, to the state, and to counties. Uses of soda ash, the main use is glass. Whether it's glass in windows and buildings in your residential structures, drinking glasses, bottles, windshields. That was a very, I'll talk a little bit about when we talk about some of the challenges, but it's very tied to the auto industry in the Midwest. Soaps and detergents, pulp paper, your baking soda. Every cake you eat has got Wyoming bentonite in it. The cookies you eat have Wyoming bentonite in it, or I'm sorry, Trona, soda ash. Water treatment, flue gas desulfurization. Wyoming Trona and Wyoming natural soda ash is used for emissions control out of power plants. And our Trona mines are located right there in Sweetwater County between Rock Springs and Green River. And finally, our other key mineral is uranium. And again, we're the nation's largest producer of uranium. Unfortunately, the amount of uranium we're producing in the country right now is negligible due to a lot of geopolitical issues going around. But we've got it here and we produce it. It's one of the most common elements on Earth. Used in ancient times in pigments and glazes. The Native Americans back in the old days were radioactive because they're painting their pots with uranium. From the 1940s, it was used in nuclear weapons, obviously. And since the 1950s, the primary use has been used as fuel in nuclear power plants. The United States is the largest user of nuclear power. We have about 99 reactors online right now. It's fueled almost entirely with foreign sources. We mine our uranium today in Wyoming in situ. We don't do open pit mining. The in situ process is basically pumping a solution through the ore body, bringing the solution up, and then it's processed into yellow cake uranium right here in Wyoming. A key point I'd like to point out is about 1 pound of uranium has the energy capacity of about 20,000 pounds of coal. So you get a real bang for the buck with uranium. Uranium, as I mentioned, it's a locatable mineral. You explore for it, you stake your claim, and you develop it. Our mines are in situ, as I mentioned, and most of the activities in central and northeast Wyoming right now. We mined about 82.6 thousand pounds in 2020. That is negligible compared to about 7 million pounds back in the 1970s. The industry employs 120 people right now, compared to about 6,000 back in the 1970s. And it generated a paltry $1.8 million in taxes, royalties, and fees last year. Our operations right now, we have 5 operating uranium mines, and then what they're basically doing is just running water through their pumps right now, bringing out, like I say, a negligible amount of uranium right now just because of market conditions. A little graphic to show the in situ process. You pump your solution in. The solution is basically water, carbon dioxide, and natural soda ash, baking soda. It goes through the ore body, brings the uranium up, and then it is then trucked in a truck with resin pellets. And the resin pellets adhere to the uranium. You take it to a facility up top, and the uranium is separated from the resin pellets by an ion exchange process. Don't ask me to explain it. I'm not that smart. But at the end of the day, what you have is yellow cake uranium. Yellow cake uranium is then shipped off elsewhere to be converted into fuel and enriched. And there's a kind of a look of where our operations are in Wyoming right now. We do have there is quite a bit of exploration going on for uranium now, and permitting going on. But these are kind of the ones that are on the ground that have facilities up and running right now. And rare earths and gold, and this is kind of exciting. It's no secret the Chinese control about 97% of the rare earth production. They have a corner on the market. It's a national security issue because rare earths, which really aren't rare, I mean, they're found everywhere, just in the concentrations where they can be economically mined is the question. But they're using everything from your electronics, lasers, fiber optics, magnets, alloys, advanced weapon systems. Again, the products that we use every day. And again, it's a question of dependence as to whether you want a dependent, what do you want to call them, an adversarial partner, or whatever the thing we call the Chinese today, enemy, frenemy, whatever. You want to be dependent on other countries for these critical minerals that we need to develop the products that we use every day. So we've got some rare earth projects under development, Crook County and in Northern Albany County. We've got a company that's actually exploring and doing some stuff out there right now. And again, as I mentioned, we've got a little gold company that is going to be mining for gold here within the next 5 years west of Cheyenne. So the stuff is in the ground. It's just how you get it out and how you get it out responsibly. And just a little graphic, it's a little dated, but some of the things that we use every day that we need those rare earth minerals for. I don't think anybody has an iPod anymore, but I guess you know where I'm going with that. So I wanted to touch a little bit on regulation. The mining industry is the most heavily regulated industry in the state of Wyoming and probably the United States. And our main regulatory body, first of all, we answer to the alphabet soup of regulatory agencies at the federal level, whether it be the EPA, the Office of Surface Mining, the BLM, the Forest Service, you name it. We have to answer to those organizations at the federal level. But at the state level, we answer to the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality, and we're subject to the Wyoming Environmental Quality Act. You got to get your permits. The Wyoming Environmental Quality Act is the code of conduct for the operators, and sets the standards that you have to do in order to operate and develop the resource responsibly. We have state supremacy, and this is our state primacy, and this is important. The state of Wyoming runs its coal program. Now, it has to be approved by the Office of Surface Mining at the federal level, but our regulators and the folks in the state of Wyoming regulate our coal program, and that's very important. We have a great working relationship with our regulators. I think oftentimes it's portrayed in the news as industry and the regulator are at odds, they're adversaries. We have a great working relationship because they're Wyoming people. We're all Wyoming people, and we realize that the need to work together, to collaborate, to be partners, to develop our resources responsibly. Do we always agree? Nope, not at all. But 9 times out of 10, we can come to a solution. Not everybody's happy, and that's usually the best type of solution you get is when someone's angry about something and you can get the job done. We also, about 5 years ago, received primacy of our uranium recovery program. We're an agreement state, and that was something that I'm particularly proud of. We worked very hard on that with the state of Wyoming and with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to receive regulatory primacy over our uranium recovery program. And it's worked well. At the time, you had uranium operators actually paying for a dual permitting, a dual regulatory process. And a uranium operator has to pay to get the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to regulate their operation, and they don't have to do that now because the state does it, and it saved the industry millions of dollars. So, and again, we've got a very professional group of people at the Department of Environmental Quality, and we get along very well with them, and we solve problems. So this is just kind of spelling out what it takes to get a mine going. The Environmental Quality Act is our legal basis for mining the mineral in Wyoming. You have to do your environmental baselines, you have to have your mine plan, and most importantly, you have to have your reclamation plan. In Wyoming, we mine, you wreck the land, you get the mineral out, and then you clean up your mess. And our reclamation is the best in the world. And then just a few other things. And I'll leave these slides if anyone wants to go out and bore themselves to sleep and read this stuff tonight. But the key point on this one is all of our mines are bonded. You cannot operate in Wyoming unless you are bonded. This is in the case that an operation goes belly up. The state has the financial resources to go in and clean up the mess. It's important to note that even during the bankruptcies of the last 5 years in the coal industry, we and a couple particularly nasty ones, not a single operation in Wyoming, coal operation, missed a reclamation obligation. Every one of these guys, even in the bankruptcies, even in the changes of ownership, all of the reclamation was getting done. Nothing got missed. And they're fully bonded today. Every mine in Wyoming can go belly up tomorrow. The state has the resources to go in and do the reclamation if necessary. That's not going to happen, but if it did, we'd be covered. And so just more about the Environmental Quality Act. But again, to kind of hit a little bit on the reclamation, once your plan is approved, you have to follow your plan. And reclamation, and I'll speak specifically to coal on this because coal is kind of the, with the large mines, it starts the minute you turn earth. When you go in and you mine coal in Wyoming, you take the topsoil off. Topsoil is stockpiled because topsoil is a resource. You stockpile that, you remove the overburden. Once that overburden is removed, it's cast back into the pit where the coal has already been removed. That's the first step. It's called contemporaneous reclamation. You're reclaiming as you go. And then once that backfilling starts, then they start replacing the topsoil, the revegetation, and the replacement of wildlife habitat, et cetera. Takes a long time. And your bond is released as you meet your certain goals under your reclamation plan, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And so that's kind of describing that as well. Every single mine employs wildlife and environmental specialists and contractors to make sure this is done right. We have a long history of environmental management, of wildlife management, and we collaborate with the state in efforts like wildlife data collection and baseline inventories, and of course monitoring, so that you can make sure your reclamation takes place. You don't get your money back, you don't get your bond back unless it's done right. And these are just a couple of examples. That's reclaimed coal area right there. This is reclaimed bentonite land up here. In the front is natural, in the back is reclaimed. You can't tell the difference. In fact, I would argue that the reclaimed land looks better than the natural state of the land before it was mined. Wildlife and mining can get along. This is a Trona operation in Green River. This is an active uranium mine near Glenrock. So some of the challenges facing the industry. Take a drink of water. I'll pull a Marco Rubio here. My industry is not monolithic, and each of the industry sectors face different challenges. So some of the general challenges facing the industry today, first and foremost, are workforce issues. And what I mean by workforce issues, I'm not talking specifically like labor issues, union issues. Most of the mines in Wyoming are not unionized. We have one unionized coal mine in Kemmerer. The Bridger Underground, which is closing underground, is unionized as well. They're represented by the United Mine Workers. Two of our Trona operations are represented by the Steel Workers of America, which I don't know why that is, but I guess it's the fit for them. So, but as with many businesses across the United States today, finding workers is challenging. We don't know why. Where did they go? But the issue right now, and I'll give you just an example. Coal industry is doing pretty well right now as we recover from the pandemic and due to other factors of natural gas. Coal production is up. It's up significantly. And the larger mines in the Powder River Basin are scrambling to find workers to meet the demand. I had one operator of one of the larger operations up there told me he could hire 100 workers today and would still have to probably hire 100 more in the next 5 or 6 months. It's hard to find workers right now. And I think that's not just, that's not unique to the mining industry. That's unique to a lot of businesses today. And it's just a sign of the troubling situation we're in right now in this country. Skilled positions, chemical, electrical, mechanical engineers. We need welders. We need electricians. Right now, we're looking for accountants because that's what it is right now. So we have workforce issues. As we recover from the pandemic, with probably the exception of the uranium industry, all of our sectors are up and we need workers to do the job, and it's difficult to find them these days. Obviously exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has exacerbated already difficult market conditions with the coal industry specifically, giving the fuel switching to natural gas, the addition of renewables on the grid. Coal isn't where it was 10 years ago. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated that. An interesting issue that we're having today, right now at this very moment, to vaccinate or not vaccinate. the president's announcement that he is going to have companies over 100 employees, mandatory vaccinations or mandatory testing, one or the other. That's a big question from a mining operations. On the flip side of it, you've got the state legislature clowning around in Cheyenne right now, mandating that you can't mandate a vaccination, which is also a problem for my industry as well. You know, as to can't a business do just what a business wants to do? So we're having that out, and it's created a tremendous amount of uncertainty in the industry right now. Nobody knows where we're going to be in a month. I will tell you that the mining industry, with employees in the mining industry and COVID vaccinations, we track kind of along the lines of the state. About 30% of our workforce is vaccinated. And we have people that say, if I'm forced to vaccinate, if I'm leaving my job. And that goes back into this workforce issue. You can't leave your job. We need you working. So it's a very difficult situation for the industry to be in right now. And you know, the amount of federal and state meddling is the uncertainty is difficult to deal with. And the state of Wyoming tax structure. We're reliant on minerals. We're a mineral colony. And about 65% of our state revenue comes from the extraction industry, oil, gas, coal, and others. It's served our state very well, you know, for the past, whatever, 50, 60, 70 years. Something's got to change. We can no longer be as dependent on extraction for revenue as we have been in the past. I would love it. I love it when my industry pays taxes because it means that I don't have to pay taxes. But that's gonna have to change. Right now, there is a stubbornness in the state legislature to look at any other forms of revenue generation, and we have got serious questions that we've got to answer for the state of Wyoming as to how we're going to fund our basic, you know, our basic services and how we survive as a state. The problem for us is that structure is not going to change anytime soon. So whenever anybody looks at where we're going to generate more revenue, all eyes automatically go to the mineral industry. And we are at a point in the mineral industry right now, in the extraction industry, where we're there. You've got to maintain that balance of developing, being able to economically develop the resource and generate your tax revenue, and we're there. You know, any more tax burden on the industry, whether it comes from the federal government or the state government, you're going to make it non-economical to develop the resource and eventually just take it off the table. And then you get nothing. So that's a tough challenge. So a few industry specific challenges. Market conditions are challenging. For the coal industry, as I've mentioned before, competition from natural gas and renewables has really cut into coal's share of electricity generation in this country. 10 years ago, we were generating 50% of the electricity in this country from coal. Now we're down to about 25%. And that's reflected in our employment numbers. That's reflected in our production. It's reflected in our revenue generation. And key to that is the shrinking customer base. Utilities are retiring their coal generating plants. And this is not going to change. We may see, and I think the winter of last year kind of showed that you do need some sort of reliability with your energy grids. Coal provides that. So with, you know, I would think we would see some utilities going back on their plans to early retire existing facilities, but we're not going to be building any new coal generating plants in this country for the foreseeable future. And a lot of things have got to happen for that to change. So the market conditions for coal, we're on a glide path down. We're not going away tomorrow, but we're on a glide path down. Those are basically the big ones in the market conditions facing coal. Trona, our market conditions is international competition. We compete with synthetic soda ash in China, and that competition is cutthroat. And so again, it goes back to the tax argument. Any attempt to raise a royalty or raise a tax on the Trona industry cuts into their competitiveness, and that reflects it'll reflect in job losses and production losses, and again, international competition. Supply chain issues caused by and exacerbated by the pandemic. When the economy shut down in 2020, when you have those auto plants, those glass plants shutting down, when your customers close down, you have no place to send your resource. We're seeing that come back, but that's always an issue, supply chain issues. I'm going to skip to bentonite here and then come back to uranium. Bentonite's kind of the same thing. Our resource is unique, but again, we compete with the Chinese in bentonite. If efforts at the federal government that they're pursuing right now in Washington, D.C. to try to put a royalty rate on bentonite mined on federal lands drives your costs up for your customers are going to look somewhere else, and they're going to look to China. So we've got those international competition. And again, the supply chain issues are the same thing. The auto industry is a great idea. When you're not building cars, you're not using bentonite to mold steel to build your engine blocks. So your customers you have no place to send it. Fortunately for bentonite, what they have more than any other thing is people have cats. So buy cats and buy bentonite. And then I just can't really click on rare earths. The main challenge for rare earths is we're not on the playing field yet. We've got to overcome the issues of exploration, development, and get that product up, get it processed, get it to the market. We're not even on the field right now. So there's tremendous opportunity there, but that's the challenge right there. Uranium. So uranium is interesting. We can produce all the uranium we want, but the market conditions are being decided by international actors right now. The market is flooded with cheap uranium and depressed prices by international entities, mainly the Russians, the Kazakhstans, the Chinese. There's a reason for this. They use it as a geopolitical weapon, if you would, for lack of a better term. The Russians can mine, they can make the fuel, and they can enrich all in one. That's what they're set up for. They do not follow the environmental standards that we do. They don't have the labor standards we do. They were able to cheaply produce it, and they flood the market. The price of uranium today, I think the last time I looked, it was like $25 a pound. In Wyoming, the all-in price to produce a pound of uranium is anywhere between $45 and $65 a pound. We simply can't compete. And so in order to do that, certain things have got to change, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the opportunity section. And we have the lack of a fuel cycle industry in the United States. We can mine it and produce the yellow cake, but we can't convert it to nuclear fuel, and we cannot enrich it. We have one enrichment facility in the United States of America in New Mexico. It's owned by the Russians. We have one facility, I believe it's in Minnesota, that can do conversion, and it's not up and running. They have plans to start it up again, but it's going to have to jump through a bunch of regulatory hoops. It's in the middle of a community and on a river, and the likelihood of it actually getting up and running is slim. We have no capacity to generate nuclear fuel for power plants in the United States of America. Public policy and regulation. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone in this room, whether it's at the state level in some of the bluer states or at the federal government right now. Public policy is going in the direction to try to pull coal out of the energy mix. And it's not, whatever you think about global warming or global climate change, it's not an issue of belief. Climate change is a fact. And the debate kind of falls around, how human activity is influencing it. But the direction we're going right now is to remove coal from the energy mix. So a key regulatory tool of those, whether it's at the federal level or at states levels, are renewable energy standards. A state in Colorado, like Colorado says, 60% of our fuel has got to come from, or our electricity has got to come from renewables by 2030. A number of states like that. It basically takes coal off the playing field. So that's tough. And utilities listen to their customers. And people in California don't want coal, they want renewables. The utilities are going to answer to that, and that's the reason you're seeing coal plants coming offline. Some of the things going on today, we have a review of our federal coal program right now. As I mentioned before, we mine leased coal, federal coal in Wyoming. And frankly, the public gets a very good value from that coal, from all the royalties and taxes and stuff that are paid. The money from that federal coal has built schools in every county in Wyoming and other facilities for the past 2.5 decades, $2.6 billion worth. So there are efforts to change that program, increase royalty rates, and in effect take the mineral off the table and make it non-economical to mine, because there are folks that don't want us to use coal anymore, and that's just the way it is, and that's something we've got to deal with. And again, emission standards, the issue of CO2. There's no question about it. When you burn coal, you put CO2 in the air where renewables don't. You put CO2 in the air where natural gas doesn't quite put as much CO2 in the air as coal does. And this is a whole question as well. So I would just a little hypothetical here, not hypothetical, it's real. When the Clean Air Act was instituted in 1974, the list of criteria pollutants under that we had to control, in that period from 1974 to where we are today, we've decreased those criteria pollutants, and I'm talking real pollutants like mercury, particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, et cetera. Those have come down 97% since the implementation of the Clean Air Act. Now we're considering CO2 a pollutant. Whether you consider it a pollutant or not is kind of irrelevant, but the opportunity there, if we've done that emissions control and those emission standards with those other actual pollutants, why can't we do it with CO2? And that's where we'll fall into one of the opportunities, I think, that we'll discuss here in a minute. With uranium, you have federal efforts to limit or even ban uranium mining. The state of Virginia passed a law a couple of years ago. You can't mine uranium in Virginia. The state of New Mexico, the state of Arizona are also putting in restrictions to ban uranium mining. There are federal efforts at the EPA to regulate groundwater restoration. State of Wyoming owns its water. We regulate our uranium program, but we still have to fight the EPA on their standards to regulate groundwater. And there have been efforts here within the last 5 to 6 years with standards set so high that you just can't mine uranium because you can't meet the groundwater restoration standards. And lengthy permitting timeframes. And this is pretty standard to everything. It takes about 10 years to permit a mine, and that's simply too long. Especially when we need to get some stuff off the ground going now. Timeframes for permitting have got to be addressed both at the state and federal level. Bentonite, it's kind of the same issue. Federal efforts to impose new royalties and taxes on mining, which would in effect make the mineral non-economical to mine. You've got to keep that balance of keeping the mineral economical to mine. Lengthy permitting timeframes. And again, rare earths, we're not even on the playing field, but we're starting to get. And in order to get these mines up and going, you've got to go through the permitting process. You've got to answer to all those agencies, and it takes a long time. And in order to get, I mean, this is critical. Rare earths are critical. We've got to figure out a way to solve the problem of lengthy permitting timeframes. So opportunities. It's not all doom and gloom, I don't think. Nothing is as good as it seems. Nothing's as bad as it seems. The reality falls somewhere in between. We have tremendous opportunities specifically here in Wyoming. Opportunities for coal, technology. If we could achieve emissions controls on actual criteria pollutants, there's no reason we can't do it with carbon dioxide. And so the development of commercially viable CCUS technology, the state of Wyoming is a leader. We're putting millions of dollars into it, whether it's at the Integrated Test Center, whether it's the efforts right here at the School of Energy Resources. We're going to solve that problem. And eventually, once we do, we may build a new coal plant. We may be able to retrofit some old ones, keep some existing ones online. The state of Wyoming, the University of Wyoming, we're leading the effort in that. Nationwide we are, and we can continue to do that. Coal to products. This is kind of interesting, and again, doing the stuff at the Integrated Test Center in Gillette, the new Wyoming Innovation Center, Ramaco Carbon, a private company that is looking to, they own their own coal, they own their own mine. They need to start mining is what they need to start doing, but to develop carbon products, or the carbon fiber or whatever, a myriad of things. Are you ever going to replace 200 million tons of coal with coal to products? Nah, but it's a nice little thing, and it's something that we can do to keep our resource viable. And this is kind of great too. I mean, Dr. Crockett, you guys are doing this right now. Rare earths and critical minerals from coal. That research is being done right here, right now. These are the things that we are doing, that we are leading in to keep our coal resource viable. And again, 1.3 trillion tons of coal in the ground. That resource is tremendous. And to simply just let it sit there, take it off the table, whether it be for energy generation or for products, it's scandalous. We've got to figure out a way to continue to develop that resource, to continue to create jobs, to continue to create revenue, and the products that Americans use every day. We've got to develop that resource. Reliability and generation capacity. Again, I bring this back. I think this is an opportunity for Wyoming too. What the winter of 2020 showed, especially with the Texas situation, you've got to have reliability in your energy grid. And right now, the number one fuel source for reliability in America is coal. Coal is the most reliable, it's the most abundant, and generation capacity. When a coal plant is running, it can run at about 95 to 99% of its capacity. And what that means is a coal-fired power plant that generates 100 megawatts can run at 100 megawatts. A wind farm that can generate 100 megawatts barely runs at 30 megawatts. It cannot meet that capacity. May someday with some battery technology, but it ain't today. That day is not here. So generating capacity and reliability, I think you get some folks thinking after the winter, when everything went down in Texas and they had to ramp up what coal assets they had on the ERCOT grid, which coal plants are not meant to be run up and down, up and down. It takes time to run them up. But once those plants were up, then Texas was able to start bailing itself out of the disaster it found itself in. Our grid to the north, the MISO grid, had enough coal assets on their grid, and they were running, and they avoided narrowly the same situation that they had in Texas. Reliability, reliability, reliability. And the other opportunity is exports. The door may be closed, but it's not locked. You're seeing around the world right now, coal generation, it's skyrocketing, whether it be in Europe, whether it be in India, whether it be in China. The world needs coal. We've got coal in Wyoming. We can't get it out of the country. Maybe someday we'll be able to. So don't, like I said, the door's closed, but it's not locked. And opportunities for other sectors. Our Trona industry is coming back. We have expansion projects in the works. And as we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and those supply chains start opening up, those customers start buying again, we're going to start mining more Trona. All of our operators are looking at expanding. And again, technology. We mine conventionally underground right now with big machines that just grind the earth up, grind the mineral up, bring it to the top, process it. Solution mining is the next wave, where you basically pump fluid, water, dissolve the mineral. You can bring more of it up. You can bring it up more economically, and you can get more of the resource. So the Trona industry is adapting. It's changing, and it's going to be viable very far into the future for Wyoming. I see a day probably within the next 10 to 15 years where Trona becomes our main industry sector, surpassing the coal industry. Uranium, we have tremendous opportunity for uranium production in Wyoming. We've got federal support. 2 or 3 years ago, President Trump implemented what he called his nuclear fuel cycle working group. Some of the results that came out of that working group We're the actual admission that we have got a national security issue with regards to uranium production in this country. We're beholden to state actors that are not necessarily friendly to us. And one of the things that came out of that was the creation of a domestic uranium stockpile. $1.5 billion over 10 years to build up that stockpile. That uranium will come from Wyoming. There was supposed to be $150 million in the infrastructure bill that's before Congress right now, $75 million. So there's one reason, if there are not many reasons to support the infrastructure, but that's one reason we support it, to get that $75 million to start bidding out and start buying uranium from Wyoming. Fact of the matter is that our private companies in Wyoming cannot compete with state-sponsored actors. You can't compete with the Chinese who run their uranium company. You can't compete with the Russians who run their uranium company. You've got to have federal support. And so federal support for uranium mining is probably critical to getting our uranium industry back up on track. The Pacific Core TerraPower reactor project. This is huge. If they can pull this off, which I'm optimistic and hopefully bullish that they can, you're restarting the nuclear industry in Wyoming and in the United States. You're getting us back on the playing field, which we haven't been on the playing field since the 1970s. And we have the opportunity to rebuild the nuclear fuel cycle in America. And again, this has got state support. The governor has put together what he's calling his nuclear implementation team in Wyoming. And this is a moonshot. If we've got the uranium operators in place, we can mine the uranium here. Why not go for it and try to get those conversion facilities and enrichment facilities in Wyoming and make it a one-stop shop? Is it easy? No. It's a very heavy lift, and there are a lot of moving parts, but we have the opportunity to be at the forefront to restart that nuclear fuel cycle in Wyoming. We're going down this road of low emissions, getting away from fossil fuels for our energy. The silver bullet is nuclear. That's just that simple. The wind doesn't blow all the time. The sun doesn't shine all the time. We need energy all the time. And if you want emission-free, clean power, that's your silver bullet. And we've got the opportunity, if we come together, if we work together, if we collaborate and partner and do some heavy lifting, we can rebuild that nuclear industry for the United States of America. And then, of course, rare earths. There's bipartisan federal support to build a viable rare earths industry in Wyoming. And we've got, or in the United States, rather. And we've got to do it from scratch. We've got to do it from scratch, starting from opening the mines, building the processing facilities, and getting those minerals to market. And it's got state support from the University of Wyoming, from the Wyoming Energy Authority. Tremendous opportunities there. But it takes the whole effort. If we don't hang together, we hang separately. And that kind of gets to the end of my presentation here. Partnerships and collaboration are key to making this work, and it starts with education. We've got a workforce issue, and we have to have an educated workforce. We've got to educate and train that next generation of workforce coming through at all levels, secondary, community colleges, and the University of Wyoming, whether it be career and technical education, teacher training, and strong professional degree programs. We've got to build that workforce so that if we're going to stand up a nuclear industry, if we're going to get into rare earths, if we're going to keep our existing industries going, we need that workforce, and that's key. And I think we've got that partnership together, and we work together so that we can do that. And I gave you a great example. Our Trona mines in Sweetwater County. You have a workforce there that have been on the job for 35 years. You have people retiring, and they're going to retire together. We've got to backfill those positions, and it comes from whether it's an equipment operator or whether it's a chemical engineer, whether it's an electrical engineer, whether it's an accountant. We've got to get that work. We've got to solve these workforce problems. Continued and expanded exploration. It's hard to explore for minerals in Wyoming. We've got to work on that. And the Wyoming Geological Survey does a great job. Our minerals are there. We just haven't found them yet. And we've got to do work, and this is where the association and our elected leaders have got to do work to streamline our systems so that we can make it easier to explore and develop. And the final thing, research and development of new technologies. It's key. We all have to work together. Science and technology solves problems. You know, you don't believe the science, you don't believe the science. Science and technology solves problems. We've got problems in front of us. Whether you agree with them or not, we've got problems and we've got to solve them. And we can solve them with science and technology. And we must continue to invest and partner in their development to keep those unsurpassed mineral resources for Wyoming viable in the future. And with that, I will conclude, and I thank you all for letting me be here with you today.
Yeah,
And I
thank
would
you.
stand for any questions.